that was
Okay.
unaddressed in the setting.
Well, like
Like,
what's
it
what's
existed
really
but didn't
irritating
exist.
about that is that it makes it very clear that the Dark Lord is an elf. And the guy who stood against the Dark Lord and rallied the 9 races was an orc. And yet they keep beating this drum that the orc stood with the Dark Lord, and it's like, no,
Yeah, that confused me as well.
They didn't, and also the Dark Lord was an elf. So like, what's this inversion? Like, what happened here? And why are we 2,000 years later bragging that our Russian ancestors slaughtered thousands of orcs when that whole thing just was really forced. Almost at the end, they went, "Oh shoot, we need an exposition for why they're in a prophecy. How about we make Jirak, the hero and an orc, with no thought for
also,
how that would affect the setting."
They mentioned prophecy, but
from where?
What prophecy?
Yeah.
From where?
Yeah.
Who
Where'd it
were the
come from?
prophets? Who wrote it down? Who said it? Like, if it's a prophecy, what's the freaking prophecy?
Like, where does it come from? Like, who were the prophets?
My problem.
Also, I hate prophecies.
They're lazy.
My problem with the world building is that I feel like world building in a movie, that a movie or a series of movies or just whatever that creates a world that I find really engaging is done best when the world building is done without all the damn explaining everything to me. Like, don't explain it to me, just show it to me. There are some really great examples of that. District 9, for example, I think does amazing world building.
Hell yeah.
It's just all this stuff everywhere, and I want to know more, and they don't tell me, and that's great.
Yeah.
Like,
but they give you little snacks of it with that the camera following along in the beginning, just enough to get your wheels rolling, but they let you take over from there.
Right. Actually, and I actually think that another example, this is topical as well, as Star Wars does a really good job of world building by just showing me weird stuff and like not trying to tell me where it came from.
I read a lot of Sergei Lukyanenko novels. I mean, aside from his supporting awful real world politics, when he writes like Night Watch and that whole series, he'll introduce a supernatural creature for a second and will never bring it back again or even describe what it looked like, because the narrator is just like, oh yeah, he was a Kapertsnik. He opened the door for me. And you're like, what the fuck was that? I don't know. Did it matter to the plot? Not really. But it gave me the impression of there's so much out there I'm not going to know. I thought Blade Runner did an amazing job at stuff like, is that...
I was going to say Blade Runner, yeah.
Yeah, like that. Do you like our owl? Is it artificial? Of course it is. Why? Of course. Are there no animals? We're not going to talk about this again.
Right.
But you establish in your brain, oh, that's a rule. I guess there's no birds. Or, of course it's not real. Do you think I'd be here if I could afford a real snake? Okay, animals are rare. What's happening?
Right.
And you find this stuff out through, is that why you didn't leave Earth? That kind of stuff. That's letting us discover it as it comes up in an organic fashion that doesn't feel like, hey, let me explain to you something we both already know.
Right. And in Bright, you put it in the mouth of Pornstash, who is just, every time he opened his mouth...
You leave him alone. I love that guy.
Every time he opened his mouth, he was so intense, and you just wanted him to shut his mouth and get punched.
This is the only gesture he knew.
Right. I don't want my exposition from that yelly asshole.
Yeah, or that other redheaded bearded guy who's like, no, that's something you don't see every day, like an elf with a mop.
Yes,
God. You're going to have to unpack this.
Elves never clean, ever.
But you know what was unneeded about that is we already saw who the elves were.
Right.
We already saw who had the mops. We don't need that. You already shown us that.
I will say he had 3 lines all right next to each other that I really liked. This is fucked up. You're gonna have to explain that to me, or you're gonna have to unpack this for me, and that makes no goddamn sense. I was like, wow, summed up the whole movie review. There.
It was like it's like you're reading my mind right now. Most relatable character in the whole movie.
Ginger MacGuffin, you are the prophet. Okay.
I did have another, like, again, the things I hate. I just spent all the time talking about the things I hate. But one more thing I hate.
Opti was the wet blanket of the first third of this movie.
The tropes, that they used about women. I mean, like, where were the women in this movie?
That's a very fair
like,
criticism.
Carried around and acting
Like,
funny and
Right.
yeah.
You had
Because
Layla.
I
and you had
pointed
Tika.
it out. I'm like, this extra wife. Like, I could tell from the beginning that she was the extra wife. She was the one.
Right.
She was paraded out front to let you know he's a family man. Feel bad for him. And, the
Right.
things that he does has dramatic weight because he has a family.
Also,
we're never going to
he's
show
white.
her.
Look how open-minded he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And
Right,
so
right.
then we're never going to show her again. And then it's like, oh wait, we need to show her at the end of the film.
Right.
But-
She goes away. She comes
don't know.
back, and it's all about bumping up Will Smith's character, which were the same for every other person, every other woman in this movie. Like the woman, like even Layla, she was basically the lover, warrior, assassin for the Dark Lord. She didn't have any agency of her own other than my sister, and then Tika basically just existed to get the point to Will that he's a bride.
Oh, I hated
what I
that
mean?
character. Everything about her, really.
And then
I mean-
I don't know if you noticed this or not, but like every single other woman in the movie, besides the corrupt sergeant, was a sex object or focus of a male getting some sort of sexual,
Yep.
Yeah.
fulfillment. So like
The titty bar
women,
gunfight?
when they showed up, right?
Yeah.
There were certain female orcs in the bar that were just existed to have their boobs grabbed by orcs.
Yep.
Like literally, a couple of orcs were just sitting there squeezing an orc woman boob. Like
What about
What
what
is
about
that?
what about Assassin Sidekick? She was
she was
basically-
actually cool, yeah. But
There
again,
was Assassin Sidekick. There was also Margaret Cho.
yeah. And aside from her though, she
Who did
existed. to
she
be
looked
awful.
like that? You know who she really looked like? She looked like that guy. I can't remember the actor's name. That guy from Community, the Spanish teacher. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Ken Leong,
Yeah. Oh, she looked just like him.
I guess.
because she's
Um,
Asian.
No, it's
Yeah.
not because she's Asian.
I guess the general like shape of their heads was similar.
But yeah, that's another problem I had was just the women, the way that women were handled.
Or not.
This was a man movie. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah, and consider the source. It just is cotton candy for some, action, special effects, and some pretty pictures of elves and dwarves and a dragon flying through the sky here and there. If you're expecting to get anything else out of the film, you would be disappointed. That's why I wasn't disappointed. I just had very low expectations.
See, that's the real shame of it, though. Like, anytime you make a movie, you have an opportunity to make something really special, something that's going to last. And if you settle for making something we're going to forget about next year, okay, that's great.
Yeah, that's almost worse than just,
Not
trying
making
hard and just
so
epically failing
Investing those
some
$9
other
million
way.
into
$90 million.
nine. Just nine. It was nine.
It was
Was it?
9?
I think it was just nine.
I
Are you
want-
sure? Because I'm
They
not sure
could
if Will
afford
Smith
Will
gets out of
Smith?
bed for
Yeah.
Is
less.
it 9 or 90? Oh, yeah, you're right.
He
Then
gets
it
out
would
of
be
bed
90.
for $9 million.
Then it would
So,
be 90. Yes.
The best thing that could come from this movie is that somebody goes, "Oh, that can work. I wonder what else is in that genre that we could put out as a TV show." And then somebody comes across Shadowrun. That's the best thing that could possibly happen.
The thing that
It's
bothers,
Not like it hasn't happened before.
the flip side of that is it's like when the Ghostbusters reboot came out. I said I didn't like it, and my at the time girlfriend was like, "Shut up! I don't care what you think. This was a movie for women." And I said, "Okay, I wouldn't take that away from you. I mustn't." But it just seems to me like if you're gonna make the first big breakout movie of gender reversed whatever, couldn't they get a better writer? Don't they deserve better?
Right.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
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 I guess what helped me and allowed me to actually get enjoyment out of this film was that I already pretty much had a good idea that it
Don't get
wasn't
me wrong.
that.
I had fun watching it.
I wish it were, but
I had fun watching it with other people,
Fair.
so I could pick it apart.
Fair.
Yeah.
This wasn't a chicken you raised and became friends with. This was a chicken on a dinner table that we devoured.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and it has been deep fried in very inexpensive vegetable oil.
yeah. I
So
mean,
so let's talk
and
about